Hey, this is Clint with Textey, and in this video I want to share with you a little more about the new conversation data model. So in the previous video I gave you a quick introduction of conversations, which is our new feature, and also showed you a little example of sending and receiving a text, and we kind of talked about how conversations are created. So in this video, definitely go back and review that. If you haven't seen that video, go back, take a look at that. But now I want to move on and show you a little about the data model. So what the object and relationships actually are that are happening behind the scenes. This is very helpful to understand, especially if you're an administrator, developer, or someone that has to deal with really administering and configuring objects in your Salesforce org. So on this component, what I can see here is, what you may or may not know about this component is underneath each message, there's kind of a little string of items here. This first one says C-0030. This tells me that this message is related to conversation number 30, and I can actually just click this link underneath the text message. It will open up a new tab and take me to that record. So what we're looking at here is the actual conversation record. So there's a new object called conversation, and each conversation that's created just creates a record of this object type. So some of the attributes that exist on the conversation are, as you can see, channel. So SMS is certainly, currently the only channel supported right now. We have a status field and a substatus. So a conversation can really be open or closed, right? When it gets created, it's obviously open. A user can go in and sort of end the conversation, which would set the status to closed. We have a substatus. So if a conversation's open, it can be, now we can really track, well, where is this conversation? It's sort of in the life cycle, right? So does it need us to respond, or has the customer or the prospect been the last person to respond, and now we're waiting on them? So now that we have these finite conversations that have beginnings and endings, we can really status these much better, which sort of opens up an entire new use cases for this. The conversation has an owner. Obviously, the conversation can be owned by a particular user. An internal phone and a recipient phone. So a conversation is unique to the phone numbers. So this has internal phone is essentially your Textey or text-enabled phone number that you're sending text from. And the recipient phone is the other person's phone number, the person who's receiving the text. So this does not change throughout the life of the conversation. Your conversation is unique between these two phone numbers. It's basically a conversation that's occurring between these two numbers. So these fields don't change. And also, you can really only have one open conversation between two phone numbers, right? It wouldn't make sense for you to be able to be texting a customer from the same number, but it be two different conversations. So once you have a conversation created between two numbers, every message between those two numbers is part of that conversation until that conversation gets closed. There's a date, obviously, the date that the conversation started. If the conversation is ended or closed, we capture who closed the conversation and what the date time it was that it was closed. We capture the very last message inside the conversation. So we know what the last message is, we know if it was incoming or outgoing, and we know what the last date and time was of the last message in the conversation, so we can kind of use those data points. And then obviously anything that the conversation is related to. So is this conversation related to a contact or a lead or an account or what have you. So this is really sort of the data model and the field attributes that exist on the conversation. If you click related, you can obviously see that the way the relationship works is each individual text message has a lookup relationship to the conversation. So that's how you can go to a conversation record think of sort of the data model. The conversation record will have child records, which are SMS messages. Consequently, you could go to an SMS message record, and if it's related to a conversation, you'd be able to see that the conversation lookup field that exists on the message. Okay, so that's the conversation data model. Catch us in the next video, and I will explore and explain more features of our new conversations. Thanks.